Sometimes I have to laugh at myself because I'm looking for the record button and I'm trying to do it without my glasses. I was saying, silly, why don't I do that? And it's amazing. So I will put on my glasses so I can see the beautiful women that is on the show with me today. Listen, this is Anne Marie, host of About This Life podcast. And this podcast, it's about taking a look at some of life's challenges, taking a look at some of the things that, we had to navigate our way through. And how exactly did we make it through onto the other side? Because we want to be able to bring light and to bring hope to other people. So, what I would love to do is to have these women introduce themselves to our audience. So, Misha, I will start with you. Go ahead and tell us who you are.
Hi, and good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time zone you're joining us from. My name is Meisha Pon, and I am the owner and founder of My Circle Retreats. It's a brand that is dedicated to supporting women on their self-care journey by helping them release the guilt. So oftentimes, moms, we tend to find all the reasons why we can't prioritize ourselves. We give ourselves excuses, and ultimately it leads to burnout. And so I created this space through my circle to as a haven for moms to have a reprieve, to get in touch or reintroduce
Mhm.
themselves to themselves and be unapologetic about it.
That part. Unapologetic. Yes. Snap, snap. Janelle, tell us who you are.
Hi, I am a native Detroiter with a passion and educational background in community health, and I am the founder of Healing Her, which is a women's group created with the purpose of uniting and empowering women to flourish in their God given purpose through events and activities focused on healing, knowledge, joy, and balance. And I'm
Okay.
also a mother of five and grandmother of three now.
Oh my goodness, the babies. I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
That song, I'm Every Woman, comes into play. I'm hearing that ring in my head. Nikki, tell us who you are.
Hello, hello. My name is Nikki Shantell. I am a retired federal law enforcement officer, and I also have a business which is VOP, stands for Victory of People. It's a structured coach business. I'm a structured life coach for life that's in motion. So my focus is helping individuals who are restructuring their lives for whether they're moving to out of the country because I've moved out of the country, whether they're changing careers, I've changed careers a few times, or whether you're even looking for growth in your area of your career. So I just help you find clarity, purpose, and give you accountability.
Absolutely. So, ladies, I want to thank you for that lovely introduction. It's amazing. Anne Marie, of course, I'm host of this podcast. I also have a community called Becoming Enough, where it's a sacred place where women come together to do things like this, for example, to share our resources, our expertise, and who we are in this world as we make room for one another. And we have been brought together by a beautiful soul, a beautiful spirit. Her name is Cami Red. She brought us together on this project called Dear Black Woman. Ooh. And in Dear Black Woman, we are writing a letter to our younger selves, right, ladies?
Yeah.
To that younger girl. And in the writing of this letter to ourselves, you will find that there are a lot of issues that are coming up that emerge from it. So I wonder, anyone can start and begin and kick off this conversation. What are some of the issues in your letters?
Ooh, Miss Anne Marie. I'm going to go ahead and start.
Go ahead.
um, So it's so funny as a writer because I've journaled since I was a kid and I've started books, and this was the toughest project for me, and it wasn't even a it wasn't even a full book, but mentally, we think that healing or our healing journey comes to an end until we realize that our healing journey is it's a continuous process because there's so much trauma that's attached to so many things, and a lot of things we may not even remember. We kind of keep it in the back of our mind thinking it's a safe haven. Let me just put this in the back of my mind and not think about it. But we never take that time to actually sit still in that moment to try to heal. That's one of the toughest things I feel like it is to do in our personal lives. So it gave me the opportunity to release a lot of tears.
Mhm.
um, I've been releasing tears consistently for over 3 years. I also have a background in psychology. So I've had a lot of things that happen in my life over the last 3 years,
Mhm.
but it's given me a chance to basically release everything. And when I say release, I feel like I fully released everything. Now I can start focusing on continuing my healing journey as I have been.
Release and receive. Release and receive. Okay.
And thank you for sharing that, Nikki. Um, it's funny because I remember when I was writing my story to my younger self. So just a little background, like I've been in therapy for a really long time. I would say even more than almost 2 decades. When I first started therapy, I thought, oh, I know what I want to fix. I'll just go in, and to Nikki's point, and you think you got it covered, and then 5 years down the road, you find yourself
Yeah.
kind of, it's a reintroduction of the same theme, but in a different layer. And that has repeatedly happened to me over the last 20 years or so that I've been in therapy. So writing this book for me or contributing to this book, it didn't necessarily feel like an issue that I was, it was more of, it's a revisiting of the
Mm.
parts of me that I took the time to heal, that I took the time to acknowledge, that I took the time to process and still processing. Um, it was almost, it was like a story where I could look back at the little girl who had gone through, you know, sexual assault, who had gone through neglect, who had gone through a number of things. And the little girl or the 20-year-old version of myself was still so very angry at all the circumstances. And now being in my 40s and writing to that little girl and realizing that, oh, I can see and document my healing journey because this doesn't sting as much as it used to. And so
Mm.
that was like a celebration for me in the writing process.
Yeah.
And I really do hope, my hope in through writing this is that there are other women who may find their own voice in the words and realizing that the language, they will get language to then start talking about their own healing journey and process and um, normalizing actually talking about it because I don't think we do
Yeah.
a lot in our community.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I thank you for that, Misha. And in this project, I actually was speaking with one of my friends earlier. And the first time I went to therapy was back in 2008. And I had like an epiphany after maybe a month or so and was like, oh, I'm all set. And I stopped going for years. And then, things came back up and I did, I think I was going through a divorce maybe 5 years later and I started going again. Um, but therapy and healing and evolving all have so many different layers. And in my story, I talk about different, some are milestones, some are traumatic events that occurred in my life. Um, where sometimes I felt like, is it going to get better? I kept believing that it was going to get better. And it seemed like, okay, well, I'm coasting, and then something else happens, and then something else happens. And it's very easy to start thinking like, okay, why even keep trying, or what can I do differently to get a different result? So my story is about learning to be assertive and confident in my God-given gifts. As I grew from a child with, no one really has power as a child.
Right.
So if we don't address that, then we can grow into powerless adults. And so I'm grateful for that. And I hope that it blesses other women and people in general to realize the power that we do have over our circumstances.
Absolutely. And the choices that we can make to change our circumstances as we see fit. We can literally co-create our lives with a higher being. I believe in God, so I always go to my maker and say, okay, we're going to do this together. Is that what we're doing? You let me have part of it. And it's just interesting to me. One of the things that it highlights is this whole notion that women evolve. That Misha, I think you mentioned in terms of your 20-year-old self versus being in your 40s. And I don't even know how old I was when I finally realized that. I was well into my adult years that, you know, you can look back at situations and find that they look differently, and you learn a new lesson from it because it has something else to show you. Any one of you have an experience like that in terms of a situation or a circumstance has something else to show you, and because of it, you evolved?
I definitely have that. Um, I definitely have that. I feel like if you're open to growth, then that can always happen. And problems are a part of our life. But for me, it was how I had to retire from my federal government position. And that I just officially retired in July of 2024. I remember telling God and having his plan. And the saying of you tell you tell God your plan, he's gonna
He
laugh at
laughs.
you. And I said to myself, my plan was to retire within 20 years, 20 put in 20 years or 21, retire from my federal government job. But I had to go out on disability retirement. I ended up getting injured at work while I was on duty,
Mhm.
and it affected me a lot. But I'm sorry, but
That's okay.
the effects of every the effects of everything dissipated. I thought I was going to get to a point where I went back to work. But then what happened is that now I've had to adjust my entire life. I've had to learn who I am because I'm no longer that person who was able to do my job, who was able to work out 5 days a week, who was able to just pick up and go or get on an airplane and go anywhere without thinking of any type of medical condition that I have to focus on. So I've been adjusting. I've come to a stable point. I'm in a better space, but it also made me realize that God has set everything up for a reason. It's a
Mhm.
reason that everything happens. And as I've progressed, I may not be 100%. I may not be in the level where I was used to being, but this new normal, as I've progressed, it gives me the opportunity to appreciate God more because I'll give you a small thing that happened. And
Mhm.
I think about it now, even though I'm home and I'm safe, there was a situation that there was one of our officers whose home was shut up. And that could have been me while I was still at that location. I worked outside of the United States. I worked in a U.S. territory. That very well could have been me. I don't know if God has made this happen for me to say, this is me saving your life in one aspect so you can maneuver, adjust, or my favorite word is to be able to pivot while
Yeah.
something is going on. So I've learned to pivot and make adjustments.
Well, thank you for that share. Thank you. Anyone else
Thank
want to
you.
comment? Thank you.
Well, I was in an off again, on again relationship for about 10 years. And in 2018, he proposed. We're house shopping. I had a bridesmaid packet, went to brunch with all the bridesmaids and all of those things. And maybe a week later, he decided that he didn't want to get married.
Mm.
And at the time, I had moved out of my home, was living with him, looking for a place. We put an offer in on the home, all of those things. And I was a single mother of 5 children at the time, not little kids, but I still had 2 children at home. And it was devastating, to say the
Yeah.
least.
Yes.
And I remember laying prostrate on the floor with my arms just out and just calling on Jesus, because I couldn't see myself getting past it. It was some of the worst pain that I felt at the time. And I ended up going and living with my bishop and his wife. And it was a hard step for me. And I was getting emails, you've been cut off of this credit card, the gym membership is ended, all of
Mm.
these things. And uh, I lived with them for about 3 or 4 months. And then I got my own place. I started doing shipped shopping, grocery shopping to make extra money. I was working. I had a pretty good corporate job, but children, I had 2 kids in college at the time, all of that. And I realized that I had peace, even though the finances weren't flowing like they had been before. And, he made a nice amount of money and was helping me out, and even helping, the kids that were in school. And I took on another job. I started doing meal preps on the weekends and cleaning the bathrooms at an office space in the evenings. And then I still had my day job. And within maybe 3 months of that, someone called from my company and asked me if I was interested in a position that was a huge promotion, where I no longer had to work those multiple jobs. I was able to be at home with my children. And I'm grateful for that time. Some of my coworkers would laugh because I would change out of like my business casual and
Right.
put on my joggers
Right.
and my t-shirt, like, oh, you going to clean them bathrooms today? And I was like, hey, I'm saving up. I'm paying for my furniture. Because when I say I had given up
Mhm.
like everything, I had given up just about everything other than our clothes. But I was blessed to be able to furnish the apartment. I had a job where I was no longer struggling. And I'm grateful for that sacrifice. I'm grateful. And I feel like God showed me the thing that I had on that pedestal I didn't need. I needed him and I needed myself. And I remember when we finally did break up, that's what I told him. As long as I have me, I'm good. And
Mhm.
I thank God that I am still that. So
And I just thank God for keeping us because, oh, there's so many connections that as women we can make in terms of when we experience heartbreak. And oh, don't get me to crying, Misha, because I'm about to go in deep, and I said I might get choked up. So
But it's okay. We're here
a
for
safe
it,
space.
It's
right?
a
when I
safe.
tell you, and what's this year, 2025, when I tell you, because I married my college sweetheart, um, and we were together for a good long time, almost 30 years, but it was a huge, um, volatile relationship.
Mm.
And when I tell you that you reach a tipping point And I walked out of the house, got in my car, had no idea where I was going, didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew is I couldn't do it anymore. And all of the stories in between, and the trying and the counseling and trying to come together, and the kids and so on and so forth. But that's like over 10 years ago now. So it doesn't sting anymore. And in fact, I can often laugh about that experience because I have evolved from it. I want to tell you what stings though is since that time, I was, I don't even know if I can call it a relationship. I was in a situationship with a man that I literally gave him my heart. So, Janelle, when you were speaking about giving him everything, I didn't give him everything materially because
Mhm.
he is, above my um, economic level, but I gave him my whole heart.
Yeah.
And when that ended, I just like, okay, God, what's next? So that's what came up for me when you were describing that, because I was just like, I know, you gave everything, all the pieces, and all the pieces. Misha, come on, throw a question out there before I start crying.
So I was curious about like what was I've heard, so Nikki, you talked about your experience in the military, and Janelle, your experience in working multiple jobs while supporting your family. And Anne-Marie, you're losing a partner, a situationship over the course of 30 years or so. Tell me, like, what did you see as the defining moment? What was it that clicked for you that made you realize like it is time for that pivot?
That's a
Mm,
great question.
yes.
That's a great question because so many people don't know when to pivot. There's no sign. Like I literally would joke with people, and I'm like, and it's not a joke to me, but that's what I wanted to happen. Like I'm waiting on God to come sit down on my couch and say, "This is it. You're done going through everything. I got you."
Mhm.
But it didn't happen in that manner. How it happened for me. First, I'll start off by telling you I spent about 7 to 8 months balled up in my closet crying. And I don't know if you all remember this movie. It was called, I think, War Room.
Hmm.
Yes, yes.
Yes, yes.
When
Priscilla
the lady,
Fire, I think.
okay,
Yeah.
so
Priscilla,
she
yeah.
created and she put Bible verses throughout. I think it was in her closet. She put Bible verses
Hmm.
and everything throughout. I didn't know. At one point, I said, I'm going to do that. I had no idea that I was intentionally doing that until it just clicked to me on in my mind recently. But it took me about 7 or 8 months to get up out of that closet. I only left the house at one point to only go to the doctors. I remember walking into Chick-fil-A and it seemed so crowded to me that the walls felt like they were caving in on me. And I had to
Yeah.
leave. I couldn't stand in there anymore. It got so bad. But the turning point for me was because I also I thought about committing suicide. It just took
Mhm.
a great therapist to help, great doctors and I'm all over the place. But us as Black women go through so much when it comes to the medical system of
Hmm.
not being believed. Like you're not taking my word for how much I'm in pain and how much I'm dealing with so many things. It took for me to just tell myself, it's time. It's time for you no longer to be still. It's time for you to get up, start dressing yourself. Just get up and put on some nice clothes. Get up,
Mhm.
put on some makeup. I was going to doctor's offices and I'm fully dressed up and people are looking at me like, you must got a date. No, I got a date with a doctor. But I had to get to that point because I only had two options. It's either give up or fully give in to God. I've been asking him for the longest to carry me, and he's been carrying me because there's no way I was able to get through all of this on my own. But it was either give up or you're going to get it together now and try, continue to try. So that was my turning point.
Yeah. I can answer the question and the comparison of the two relationships. The first one, in terms of my marriage, the turning point, we had an argument, and I was in a marriage where I was blamed for everything. And so a lot of ego was involved. And so when things didn't go right for him, it was always my fault.
Mhm.
And the young, naive person I was in college would take that on and adopted that sort of as my identity. And so I felt inadequate. If only I was this, if only I was that, yada, yada, yada. And then when I came out of that part, I was still married, and I stayed married because I had two sons. And as many women find out, there's a financial thing that's going on. It's like, how am I going to support my children? And he makes more than me, so he has the ability to take my kids from me. So we endure, we sacrifice, we say, okay, we get through this. But I pivoted, and I remember the night. I remember the date, November 3rd, 2013. And we had the argument, and there was just something in my soul. Something in my soul, just when I said, existing the way that we were existing was worse than the fear I had of leaving. So the way I was living, the tipping point came when that became greater than the fear of leaving. And I walked out in the middle of the night and checked myself in a hotel room. And I didn't go back. Like I didn't go, I had my suitcase and I would come by and get my clothes. And, it's a longer story than we have time for here. But I had made a decision. It's just like, I don't care at some point. And, I have slept on floors. I have been a grown woman renting a room in somebody's house. Gone through all of those things that you would consider undignified. Bring it back to the most recent relationship, in terms of I was involved with someone for 3 years. And it was the healthiest place I thought that I have ever experienced in my life, in terms of the foundation being friendship and that time spent knowing one another. And I remember when it ended, and I didn't end it, he ended it. The difference in how I evolved is I wasn't devastated as I was the first time. There was no devastation, and I was very calm this time around. And being calm in that experience, I start to look at the red flags and recognize in myself, Anne Marie, you knew better, but you ignored them. And so it became a period of reflection. Girl, why did you ignore them? And so it has been more about me reflecting on myself than grieving the relationship, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. To kind of piggyback with you on one of my most recent therapy sessions, my homework was when do you think you first started considering yourself not worthy of consideration?
Mm,
And
mm. Say that again, Janelle.
she said, when did you first start considering yourself not worthy of consideration? So, yeah, I've been unpacking that. I think this whole process is, yeah. And answering Meisha's questions about the moments. I have 3 moments. I'm going to keep them very brief. The first was getting out of my first marriage. I got married when I was 18 and had all them babies. And it was a roller coaster. My youngest son has watched Crooklyn and been like, that was like our life. Um, so, and we got petty. My ex-husband cheated like crazy. And after about a decade or so of being married, I dallied and dillied myself. And I got to a point where I just didn't want to do that. And it was like, I don't know if it was the Holy Spirit or myself, or I was just tired of that. And I said, you know what? I am going to be light. I'm going to be the light and show up the way that I'm supposed to show up. And I started going to doula training, and I had clients, and that was my focus. And I remember I had a client, and it was her first baby. I'm at the hospital, and my ex-husband had gotten arrested. He's calling me repeatedly. Now, these are paying clients, and this is her first baby. I'm not messing up her experience. And so I didn't answer the call. And whatever he did when he got arrested, our car got impounded. In the past, I would have gotten the car out. Mm-hmm. But I reached a point where it was like, I'm never going to get ahead. I have the rent money. If I take this $300 and get that car out, I will be scrambling to get this $300 to make up the difference for the rent. And when I got home, one, he was mad because I didn't answer the phone while I was, being, I don't know if you all are mothers, but mothers at the very least. So yeah, no, you cannot answer a phone call in the middle of active labor. And I decided I would just get a ride. I had friends, I had family, I could get back and forth to work. And that car sat an impound for 30 days. And I felt a shift in our relationship because I had taken my power back. And what I thought was my power was, oh, you can do it. Oh, you want to, as my mom used to say when we were little, you want to have a clown contest? And no, I got nowhere with that. When I really truly started walking in who I was created to be and not being distracted by whatever was going on or trying to pay back, then there was no room for that darkness and that chaos. So that was one. The second was my fiance that I was talking about earlier. We were sitting in premarital counseling with the bishop and his wife, and the bishop said, hold on, and looked at me and said, Janelle, he is a moving target. And as long as you stay with him, you are signing up for that cycle. And then he looked at my fiance and said, you are going to miss out. And he told me that I didn't have to stay there and that he and his wife had room at their home if I needed to stay and get on my feet. And through my life experiences, whenever something traumatic had happened or was going on previously, I had been told to have empathy for the person, have grace for the person. This is maybe why they did that, or, you'll be okay. And that was the first time for me in 2019 that I had someone, especially a male, say, oh, no, we're not doing that. Right. And it was like, I'm not crazy. I was right. I am being mistreated. And it was such a freeing thing and the start of just breaking out of that. And just very briefly, maybe 8 months after that, he was still sniffing around and all of those things. And he was talking about, oh, well, if you don't do this, I'm not taking you to Florida. And if you don't do this, I'm not going on the cruise with you. And that's when I had that breakthrough moment. And it really felt like a light switched in my brain. And I said, as long as I got me, I'm okay. And then he said, oh, no, I'm still going to take you. But I was done. And that was that. So those moments of clarity, if we're open to them, when we're ready for them, they will
They
be there.
come.
When you get to that point where you don't care about cleaning the bathrooms in the office, when you get to the point where you don't care about renting the room or, sleeping on somebody's couch or whatever it looks like, because you are going to get to your freedom, that's the breakthrough point.
That part.
Mhm.
You get to your point of peace.
Yes.
You
Yes.
get to a point of peace. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
How
Misha
about you,
didn't answer
Meisha?
her question. Yes.
Um, so for me, let's see, defining moments. So when I was asked or the question was asked around like moments for evolution, I was thinking more along the lines of like, yeah, I've kissed a few frogs, you know, um, and I was having this conversation with a friend recently too, and since we're on the topic of frogs, um, I realized so in my 20s, I used my body as a way to get attention or a way to feel love or a way to um, feel validated by men. And it took me years and years of working through that to realize, like now in my 40s, I'm like, you know, little 20-year-old Misha was looking, and there's an expression, you look for love in all the wrong places. Now I would say I am grateful for those opportunities or grateful for the experience. And what it's taught me is and helped me get to the point of with the book is the love starts with me, right?
Yes.
So I realized that I didn't, the question that your therapist asked about, like, at what point, can't remember exactly how it was phrased, but it's a very similar tone in the sense of at what point was I looking for, or what point did I realize, or what point did I not realize that all the things that I was looking for, validation, love, whether that was verbal or physical, I needed to see those things in myself first.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was, I don't know exactly, it was at my 30s, where that shift kind of started happening, where I started to realize, oh wait, I can't, this external validation that I'm seeking, it's not going to be satisfying, it won't be fulfilling, there's nothing about it that's going to meet the very core of what I'm actually looking for because I'm not spending enough time with my own self to see those things in myself. So that was a I would say a turning point in the way that I saw myself, in the way that I started to treat myself, in the way that I could find beauty in my own self, right? Starting there and then building up on that. So yeah, I think, that's what comes to mind
Amen.
around this topic.
That's good, Misha.
Hey, that's good. That's so good. And I'm thinking about this movie, Sinners.
Mhm.
We were talking about it before we started. Oh my goodness. The difference between a character named Annie and a character named Mary. My goodness. Annie had a certain confidence in herself. I think about all that the Black woman in particular, all that we had to bear.
Mhm.
And I think about she embodied authenticity. She embodied the natural in terms of being comfortable with herself.
Mhm.
And in contrast, Mary was more, she was into things for herself, as long as it pleased her, um, as long as she could benefit from it. both of these women are in love with twin brothers, which through the mastermind of director Ryan Coogler, the twin brothers is played Michael, what's his name?
Jordan,
Michael B.
Michael B.
Jordan.
Jordan.
Michael B. Jordan plays both characters, and you would think that there are two individuals on this screen. What what comment, if you would, for those of us who saw the relationship between Smoke and Annie, the relationship of his brother and Mary, I mean Stack and Mary. How did you see the woman portrayed differently? What did you get out of it? Because those of us who've seen it went twice.
I I definitely agree with what you said as far as Annie, her confidence. It was exhilarating to see her on screen in that role and getting the love that she received for being exactly who she was. Who she was. Mary, on the other hand, gave, and this is my take, stop letting outsiders come into insiders' business. That's
Mhm.
for one. But the other thing, she didn't have a sense of identity because she herself didn't know who she was.
Mhm.
She allowed other people to influence all of her decisions. And she didn't get her confidence until she became a vampire.
Yes.
So she,
And in some regards, she jeopardized the love of her life, Stack, because she was thinking about her own needs being fulfilled, not
Mhm.
realizing that she was putting him in a precarious position. What do you think about it, Janelle, in terms of the way love was portrayed in the movie?
When I saw Mary and I think about Mary's character, it very much takes me back to the young woman that I was when I got married at 18,
Mhm.
to a very charismatic man,
You
sparkly,
too?
if you will. Yes, yes. Uh,
That was me.
yeah, and it was like, oh, you want me? And, um, so just having that constant desperation of
mm,
for validation from that person and not trusting your instincts and really trying to prove a point about who she was and how her power, um even by going and speaking to the people that were sitting outside the juke joint and saying, oh, well, I can find out what's going on. And it's like, girl, no, you can't. And when
Yeah.
he told you that you weren't safe here initially, she could have listened to that. And she was married and just so many things, but she was very much unhappy with the life that she had and who she was and had not found her power at all.
mhm,
Where by contrast, Annie was such a force to
Mm.
me and so self-aware and knowledgeable and empowered and confident and loving, and she did not let Stack you know be who he was with outside people. There in their relationship, she made sure that she had a voice and he respected that, and to the point that even, I don't know, spoiler alert, but even when
Yeah.
things happen, at the end of the movie, or not at the end of the movie, but when she met her demise, um, I felt at peace. I didn't feel a sadness
Yes.
because
mhm.
she knew she was empowered. She was prepared. She left directions. She was good, and that's how we can be. So I don't know that I'm where she is, but I'm not where I was. So
But here's the thing, she defined herself.
she did.
She said this is what's going to happen, and when you're in that situation, this is the action that I want you to take. So she was in clear control and she knew her
Yes.
choice. and it had a beautiful ending on the
Yeah.
other side as well. So
Yeah.
it was amazing, the love between her and Smoke. Misha, just in terms of bringing us into closure and rounding out the conversation, you mentioned a retreat and let women let go of this guilt. Oh my God. We are overwhelmed with a lot of guilt put on by others, but if we're going to be honest, we put it on ourselves too. How
Yes.
did that come to your heart?
Ooh. Ha. Um, so I'll give you the truncated version. I became
Okay.
a mom. All right. So, back kind of you mentioned this about some of the projection of how this guilt, where it comes from, is external. It started with me from a very young age with like maternal and like my environment, caregiving environment, what I was supposed to be when I got to college, or I was supposed to go to college and do the things, get the job and work in the big office and make X amount of money. And so those were the expectations that were kind of set. I took on those expectations. The more that I did that and I became a mom, I started to realize and kind of like weighing my priorities in life and just the imbalances of the relationship where just the thought of I made a decision to become a mother. And so I brought this child into this world. And then now I have to neglect it because I need to go chase all of these things over here. And so it was an unraveling of where did I even get these things that are over here? Where did that come from? As I started to break that down, from my own experiences, realized that I was carrying the weight of other people's expectations,
Mm.
and then I also adopted those expectations as my own, and then
Yes.
it became webbed into a part of my reality, which was very fabricated. So I needed to undo the weaving or undo the thread,
Mm-hmm.
and then kind of like define it on my own terms. Like what does womanhood or what does motherhood or what does being a spouse mean to me, and how am I going to define this so that it feels whole for me? And as I started having more conversations with other women and other moms, I realized like I was not in a silo. Like all of us are going through this.
Yeah.
Most of us go through this,
Yes.
where we adopt ideology, we adopt things that are just not for us, and we pick them up as our own, and then somehow we just get tangled into that mess where we forget our own identity. And I wanted to hold space for women. Once I started realizing that, I hold space for women to start to do that unraveling themselves, because we get to choose, we get to define how we show up. And then when it comes to the guilt, we get to release that, because then
Yes.
because as we're redefining who we want to be and how we want to be and when we show up, we then get to release some of those ideas that we've kind of adopted. And so that's the story of how my circle was birthed. I've been around now for a little bit over a year. And I deeply, I reserve this space, and I am so gracious and thankful for the opportunity to just invite other women to release that proverbial cape, because we've picked it
Yes.
up along the way, but it's not ours.
You took
It's
care of
someone
it.
else's, and it's time for us to return it and then make our own.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, ladies, I want to thank you for joining me on About This Life. I want to honor who you are and rallying around. We all answered Cammie's call. Cammie Red, who is the founder, the creator of the Dear Black Woman brand. And in terms of this anthology project that we are collectively bringing our souls to, there is so much goodness, there is so much love, there is so much healing, and there's a certain level of sacredness to
Mhm.
it. To it again. If you would just go, let's go around, just name the name of your company one more time. Tell us the name of your organization, and then we will just close out with that.
Okay. The name of my organization is Healing Her, and it is a women's healing group. We host different events and we gather and share and grow and create networks and community and provide resources for those who are ready for change in their lives.
And I'm with My Circle Retreats. We hold space for moms to release the guilt of practicing their self-care with our 7-day African retreats.
And mine is Victory of People, but if you see it on my website, it's called Tell Nikki. It's a tagline because Shantell tells Nikki you can talk to me. So helping out with coaching and pivoting, being able to pivot.
Absolutely. And so you have been guests on About This Life, where we are changing our lives one day at a time. I would like to ask my audience to go ahead, like, subscribe, and share this episode with the women in your lives. And oh my goodness, the book is coming out. In a couple of months from when this episode airs. We would love for you to go out, find it, purchase it, ask your bookstore owners to stock it and tell the world about it, and follow us on IG under the Dare Black Woman brand. Thank you, everyone.